Hey, Studio 108. It is so good to have you here with us today. Lisa and I are sitting down to chit chat about all things Saturn. It's like sitting down to, it's like sitting down to talk about, I don't know, the Joker or the bad guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or if you watch The Lion King and that, when the hyenas were like, Mufasa, and they would like shrivel and, get all nervous at the sound of his name. That is what reminded me of when people talk about Saturn. I mean, there is a trembling, a fear of, oh my gosh, Saturn is retrograde, or Saturn is doing this in my chart or in my life or in my sign.
Yeah, speaking of chart, let me grab the chart.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot to grab. Yeah, Saturn's the little guy. He's little and he's got the rings. So he can like fly through space and kind of right through our illusions.
Exactly. Saturn has a way as it transits your chart. So remember, I talk about a lot how it transits your house, but then if it pings your natal planets, especially those personal planets, that's when Saturn's doing a lot of work in your life. So, we all have it in different ways. And Saturn does, things that, I'll deal with later, or I'll get to later, or I'll try and like shove it underneath the rug, not really deal with it. Once Saturn starts making its way, he's like, no, sorry, love, it's time to deal with it.
We're opening the closet.
Yeah, we need to face these things.
My back went out and I was telling these guys that about 6 weeks ago, my masseuse said, your SI joint is a little bit, something's wonky on the right, go see your chiropractor. And I didn't. And 2 days into Saturn retrograde, I'm crawling across the kitchen floor, like just not gonna let me get away with it. If there's a weakness, it's time to become accountable for it.
And Saturn's retrograding and going back and forth over her ascendant in her first house. So it is a very literally a physical thing. And Saturn rules bones.
Yeah. Okay.
Backbones,
so it.
right?
Bones, hip bones, SI joint bones.
Yeah.
So
bones.
yeah, I'm feeling much better, so not to worry, because it's not the first time, but that's kind of how it is. It's like our life issues are our life issues, and where we have vulnerabilities might be the places where we're going to get a little bit of a reveal.
Yeah. We have to work.
Okay.
So Saturn, whether it's Saturn in the natal chart or transit Saturn, it's where we have this focus of work, or in the area of life in which we take things very seriously.
Yeah.
For me, Saturn's in my 6th house and Saturn's in Leo. So I always joke around with, I'm not really a fun person. I'm very serious. But if you think of Leo is supposed to be fun and creative and playful. I'm really not. Like, fun has to have a purpose for me.
Yeah.
So,
I know why we're friends.
I
get this girl.
Yeah.
We're a party, you guys. Stay tuned. Don't click off.
Yeah. So, I'm just really not that fun. But I attract people who can bring that out in me,
for sure.
So you got to work with it. But health and daily life and routines, I take those very seriously.
Okay.
Those 6th house things.
Yeah. I have my chart here because I know you're going to go through the houses today. Because if you would grab your natal chart, if you can, or click into Google and Google up your natal chart, and you can follow along. We're going to go through the houses and we're going to talk about Saturn.
We are
making visits. So if you're on the YouTube and you can see that I've got it's telescoping in here.
Or message us and I'll look it up and send it over to you.
The pies have different pieces all the way around the circle, and those are the houses, and Lisa is going to kind of break it down so that we can get a bit more intimate, because the talks generally is fun, but this is going to let you get a little more personal.
Yes. So one of the things that I wanted to really start off with is that Saturn has been in 2 Saturn ruled signs since 2017. So we've been dealing with a lot of Saturn. If you think of, life since 2017, it's been heavy. It's been very serious and weighted. Saturn first got into Capricorn in 2017. Then Saturn went into Aquarius in March of 2020. We have actually been through Saturn retrograde cycles before. So the one that has just happened in June, we've actually just had one in 2021. So these retrograde cycles, likely based upon your chart, you have that retrograde cycle in that same house. So maybe your retrograde cycle in May could have been from the 12th house, and it may not have crossed over your ascendant yet. But those are things to kind of keep in mind. You know, Saturn, when we look up at the sky, you know, ancient astrology, you can't see past Saturn, and we didn't have the technology to see past Saturn, which is why symbolically Saturn is our limitation. That's it. It's the end. You know, this is where we stop. And then obviously, and we invented the telescope, and we were able to see beyond, where Uranus now is this great awakener going, oh my gosh, there's more out there. There's more to it.
That's cool.
But our fear is Saturn. So Saturn measures the degree of our attachment to the material world and our inability to face the ultimate issues of our existence. Saturn can bring up painful lessons. It shows us what our fears are, where our knots are, you know, the things that we don't want to let go of, our attachments. So, you know, so, you know, Saturn is suffering that makes us grow inwardly, right? So a lot of times during our Saturn transits, as we see the reality of things, not the way in which we want them to be, but the reality of which they are, we have to face those things of, man, I really wanted it to be this way, or I really wanted it to work out, or I feel a heavy burden of responsibility over whatever house, right? Whatever house Saturn is transiting, the energy of the house. You know, you are in the first house, so now we're dealing with the physical body. We're dealing with a lot of responsibilities, right? If you think of like the burden on your shoulders, what are you carrying, right?
That's first house.
First house.
Gotcha.
You know, first house. You know, I did bring up some Saturn words, and Saturn is old age, responsibility, time, status, our elders, right? The wise ones. Wisdom. They are the disciplinarians, the authority, its limitations and structures. Structured. Saturn can delay. It's also where we work really hard, where we commit. It can feel restrained. It is where our karmic lessons are, and I have a weird thing with karma and astrology, because we can interpret that word in a lot of different ways. But if we think of from lessons of the past or knots, right, things that we kind of have to work through, I can sign on and kind of attach that word karma.
Right.
Especially, you know, like I'm going through a 12th house Saturn, so I'm dealing with a lot of things karmically that I felt like I had kind of released, knots I had kind of let go of, that I'm like, man, why is this coming up? Saturn can bring in depression because it does, you know, it tests us. So Saturn and sadness and depression and solitude, all of those things are very Saturnian, very heavy. You know, from a yoga standpoint, with self-discipline, right? When we practice, anything that we practice, whether it's a yoga practice or a meditation practice, when we get married or a job, there has to be a sense of commitment and discipline to do the job. So a strong Saturn is also very important.
Yeah, like I think of Saturn as being the lines, and then like Jupiter color in the lines. But like that creativity and stuff comes from other places, but the structure that holds it is the Saturn.
Yeah, we need structure. We need form, you know, as much as we like to have fun, if you think about it this way. If you eat too much and party too hard with Jupiter, you might run into some tough lessons, you know, when Saturn comes around, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, Saturn is necessary. Rules are important. You know, if you are a parent, we know, you know, the importance of rules. So, kind of give that feel of it.
So now we're gonna think about when Saturn comes through certain places.
Yes.
And then,
So I went through and I did whole house, which means that I started with Aries on the ascendant. So if you are an Aries rising, you are going to have Saturn in the 11th house. So that is work, that's working, you know, with others, reevaluating where you fit in with others, goals in life, where you find yourself involved with groups, organizations. So, you know, you may notice that Aries with Saturn in the 11th house, that maybe some of the friendships that you were really close with, they start to change, or maybe you become involved in a group organization where you are the leader or you're organizing things. You know, if you have had hopes and wishes and goals for the future, you may be taking that Saturn in the 11th house, kind of reevaluating that. The 11th house, I kind of bring in social media and technology as far as social networking kind of goes.
gotcha.
If you are working in any of those fields, you may notice that you're developing things, or you're changing things, or you're setting out to create something new that you're putting a lot of work and effort into. The Taurus, so we're going backwards. So
that would be the 11th house.
That would be
Saturn
11th
is in your
house.
11th house, and if you're
An
Aries
Aries
rising,
rising,
that would
right.
be you.
Yep, you're an Aries rising. So if you're a Taurus, now we're going to go back into the 10th house, and now we're looking at your career, your leadership, what you want to achieve. Maybe you have been working really hard for a promotion, and Saturn comes along in that 10th house and you achieve that promotion. Or you notice that you're still working, or maybe you achieve the promotion and it's really not what you wanted, right? So the 10th house is bringing in something very public when it comes to career, or public life. If you are a Gemini rising, that Saturn is going to be going through your 9th house. 9th house is legalities. It could be going back to school. You could be connecting to religion, your truth, your beliefs. You could start, you know, being really interested in metaphysics, philosophy, law, any of those things as Saturn kind of transits through the 9th house. I think when Saturn was in my 9th house, now granted it was in Sag, I believe that's when I finally finished my astrology certification, right? Mm-hmm. So here we have, you know, the finality of it, that it's kind of all said and done in that 9th house. For Cancer rising, you are in the 8th house. So Saturn now is looking at debt, your partner's money, death, major transformations in life. You could be contemplating your own mortality, but it can be as simple as, I need to make a will. I need to look into life estates, you know, or helping my parents in any of those 8th house matters of life insurance and things along those lines. For the Leo, so we are now in your 7th house. 7th house Saturn can be very challenging. I have lived through one of those. You are redefining yourself in relationships. If you are married, you may notice that there are tests in your marriage relationships. I usually go towards marriage relationships, but it is any type of one-on-one relationship. So if you have a business partner, there may be, you know, some strain there, stress there that you kind of need to look at. Is this relationship working? What do we need to kind of do to change things? Remember, Saturn through the houses is looking for the things that you need to address and face.
Okay. The red laser.
Yes, exactly, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then obviously, you know, it's kind of testing the tone of the house, but then if it's touching those natal planets, you know, that's bringing a lot of laser focus in. The house, if you have Virgo rising, now you are in your 6th house, and this is health and work and responsibilities, possible health breakdowns. So if you find that Saturn is traveling through your 6th house and you are working really hard, we know that if you are working a lot, not eating properly, you might have a breakdown in health somewhere. When Saturn was transiting through my 6th house, I decided to quit smoking. And when I quit smoking, it's not an exaggeration, my health went like this, because I developed panic attacks because I didn't realize that the smoking was this coping mechanism. And I was always a healthy person, but I really wanted to clean up my diet. When you clean up anything, you got to get rid of the yuck first.
Yeah.
So my body went through this whole, it was almost like you got worse before you got better.
Yeah.
And that's a Saturn through the 6th house. So if you're noticing that you want to clean up diet, you want to exercise, you want to get disciplined and work really hard on these things, you may notice the breakdown before you see the results.
Which really is the theme of all of Saturn's gifts.
Yes.
His gifts are that it's a little hard, it's work, it's
It is.
detoxifying in some way.
Because what happens is you go
Before
through
it
these
gets better.
hard Saturn cycles, and then you'll get into a Jupiter cycle where now Jupiter is going to touch all of the things that Saturn had touched, kind of bringing those Santa Claus, right, gifts.
Yeah.
So that's exactly, you know, how it works.
Saturn's like the practice,
Yeah.
the grit of the practice.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. The 5th house, you know, with Libra on the ascendant, you may not be having so much fun. If you have kids, they may be the focus and the responsibility. You might feel like playtime is over. There's a serious tone. So if you are a creative person and Saturn is going through that 5th house, you know, maybe you're having a creative block, or you're having a hard time expressing yourself in whatever creative way. Again, usually the focus is on children. You're starting to take your creativity too seriously, possibly, or judging yourself, being overly critical of what you're putting out there into the world. But again, demands around children, not as much fun. You can notice that even with sex, play, any of those things, there becomes a serious tone to it. So if you've been kind of like, you know, sex is fun, you may have noticed that with Saturn in that 5th house, now we've changed the tone. Well, no, I don't just want any partner. I want someone to commit to me. You know, that type of change and feel. With Scorpio rising, you have Saturn in the 4th house. So there could be a responsibility over parents, home repairs, working from home, even changing your psychological point of view. So that 4th house is, you know, it is a water house. So it is where we develop these things early in life, right? It's our parents, it's our roots. So we're looking at heritage. You may be even reflecting on your lineage and traditions you had, you know, as a family, what family means to you. If you haven't started a family, maybe now we're thinking about starting a family, right? I know I'm going backwards, but if Saturn were going forwards, you know, maybe we're looking to start a family in the 4th, and oh, as Saturn goes in the 5th, now we have children, and now we have those responsibilities. With a Sag rising, you have Saturn now in the 3rd house. So now it's about mind and communication. School, maybe you go back to school. Your neighbors, responsibility over siblings. You know, I can even stretch it to care for a neighbor, right? Or a sense of responsibility and duty, you know, where you live. You know, maybe you notice that you want to develop a neighborhood watch, or you clean up your own neighborhood. you know, it is the third house. So could you have breakdowns with more of technology and those things where it starts to limit communication? For sure. I see it more as learning how to communicate. So you may find that you are misunderstood more, where you have to slow things down and go, okay, like something that I'm doing isn't getting across, where I need to reevaluate how I'm connecting with people. With Saturn going through that third house. Travel is not so great when Saturn is in the ninth house or when Saturn is in the third house, because remember, it limits things. So my mentor would say, you know, bring some work with you. Like if you have to travel, bring some work with you to appease Saturn, right?
Gotcha.
Make it, so if it's like work travel, it's okay. If it's like fun, pleasure travel in those houses, just bring some work or visit something, you know, historic.
Exactly. Go to museums.
Exactly. To say, hey, Saturn, you know, give me the thumbs up on this trip. So the second house then is going to be your Capricorn risings, and that is your material possessions. So your money, your values, financial loss, tighten your purse strings, because now we're dealing with money and our resources, time. I had a teacher that said, you know, time is a #1 resource, and it is. So you may notice that as Saturn is in that second house, time of things or feeling like you don't have enough time, you know, might be an issue. Creating a budget, right? A lot of second house stuff. And then the first house, which would be the Pisces rising, is responsibilities, getting your bearings. It is a new cycle of self, a physical appearance. It's cleaning up, right? What in our physical appearance or in our physical body do we need to, you know, take more seriously and look at? People may notice you, right? Because it's the ascendant and it's the first house. People may notice that you look or are giving a projection of being more disciplined or self-restrained or more serious, right? Because you have Saturn going in that house as well. So if you noticed, I don't know if you noticed, because you are an Aquarius rising, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So knowing your chart is important because Tracy has an Aquarius rising, but she has Saturn going back and forth over her ascendant. So it's dipping into the 12th.
And then into the 1st.
And then into the 1st.
And then
so,
back to the 12th.
Right, so she's kind of blending in and merging the 12th and the first house as part of her kind of her Saturn cycle. Saturn does retrograde from 25 Aquarius back to 18. If you have planets at those degrees, especially with a conjunction with Aquarius or with a fixed sign, so that would be, you know, the Taurus, the Leo, and the Scorpio, that is where you're going to feel it most. So right now I have Saturn squaring my sun. It is not amazing whatsoever, just that you know. However, I do believe in cycles, and it's really, really important. Saturn has a 7-year cycle, so you go back to the conjunction. So I went back 7 years ago when Saturn was on my sun and it was doing all of its Scorpio stuff, going, okay, what did I start in this cycle that now I'm being tested and I need to look at and reevaluate, and what do I need to change?
So that would be 2015. That's 7 years, folks. Do the math.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Go back through your phone to the photos and see what was going on.
Right. Yes. So if you know your chart, it's important to look at the cycles, because, you know, every time we come in here, it's like, oh, it's the Mercury, oh, it's the Jupiter, oh, it's this. Those planets are working. It's a beautiful, you know, composition of music happening with these planets. So it's really not just one thing that's happening in your life. You know, our life is multi-dimensional.
Yeah, it's how it fits in context.
Exactly.
And yeah, the journey.
It is the journey. But you know, knowing that cycle, especially if you know you do know that it's triggering a personal planet, going back those 7 years, going, okay, what's going on now? If you have your Aquarius sun or any of your Aquarian planets at those degrees. Now you have Saturn on the conjunction. So what Saturn is now doing, that is going to play an important role 7 years from now when you hit that square.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Did you do the 12th house?
Yes.
Okay.
No, maybe not. So that's Pisces on the 12th. Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure.
Well, yeah, no, because I was thinking about you.
Yeah.
So the 12th house is finishing up a cycle. It's a time to withdraw. We can brood about our inadequacies. It's a time of cutting losses and things that you might have thought you had dealt with that kind of come back. We're making sure that the karma is clean and cleared. I have Saturn going through my 12th house. When Saturn entered my 12th house, I had moved to Massillon, and watching the transit, I'm going, what's going to happen that I feel so isolated and alone? Like, what is going to happen in my life? And I did, and I moved, and I feel very, removed and isolated and alone. When it talks about inadequacies, like, and I do have Saturn square my sun, but it's kind of like things that I really thought I was okay with, like in here, like I have all these like regrets surfacing. Like I've apologized to people from the past that I just felt like I really needed to say that. It's cleaning up a cycle.
And I love that, when we talk about it, we shine the light on it, then we can actually take action. Because there are a lot of things that happen, this is my Aquarius rising, that happen in my head, and I think of and I process and I deal with my head, but like to actually call people and apologize, to actually like bring it out so you can see it, like that's what Saturn is saying. Like, open the closet door, no, turn the light on.
Right,
We have to move
right.
the furniture, get the rug up.
Right, we have to work through the knots. We have to work through that stuck energy. There's many reasons why I love astrology, but one of the major things is knowing the cycle, knowing where it's going on, where this transit happens in your chart and how it happens in your life, and going, okay, there is no fear around it. It is, okay, this is what's happening, and these are the knots, or this is the stuff that I need to work through.
And there's a season for everything. And honestly, it's not the only thing going on.
Correct, it's not.
Okay, so I don't know that we said the dates. Saturn went retrograde June 4th, and we'll be we'll be like dragging back until October 23rd, is that correct?
Sounds correct. It's going to go down back to 18 degrees, 25 to 18, and then forward again.
Of Aquarius. And then it will come forward again. So that's what Lisa means when she says it's going back and forth over my ascendant. It's like my ascendant line is in the middle. So it's like I get it
correct.
Ping, and then it comes back again. Ping, and then it goes back. Ping. So like you actually get it 3 times. This goes forward, and then it slides back, and then it goes forward again. So that's the process. That's why we stick around for process. That's why it's so important not to like judge or draw conclusions, because it's not over. It's always developing and evolving. And
yes, and remember, we've had 4 years of it.
Yeah.
And it's not our first retrograde.
Right.
And we made it through the other ones.
The other ones, we've had some brutal.
Yeah.
And this is why these times are like, we're talking on a very personal level. We went through on the chart on a very like personal level of what's happening to me personally. But like all of this is happening to the collective, to society, to humanity. So it's like when you look at what's going on, there are some rough transits in the past, and it's really evident.
Yes,
like,
there has been.
You don't actually, I try not to watch the news, and that's the best tact I can take, but I'm not blind and oblivious to what's going on in the news. Like it's really, it's a rough time for humanity and for the planet. So.
And it's been a heavy time.
Yeah.
So I have been really looking forward to this Jupiter transit. Because remember, I went through my Saturn stuff, so the Jupiter stuff's supposed to bring the gifts.
Right.
So
I did the work. I'm ready for the paycheck.
Yeah, I mean it's been a heavy 4 years.
Yeah. So we're not alone.
No.
I can say to Lisa, like, hey, that's Saturn. My back went out, that's Saturn. And she laughs and she knows. And like we kind of lift each other up. So come in and see us.
Absolutely. And all of my classes, they will all I always am pulling some transit, something for students to kind of sit with and just contemplate, you know, because I don't know your chart, but I want to be able to communicate in a way, you know, like we were talking about Saturn. If you're in a yoga class, you can feel knots in your body, you can feel knots in your mind. And just knowing that, you know, paralleling that with Saturn, going, okay, I'm working through those Saturn knots and that Saturn story in my physical body while I'm in my yoga practice.
Yeah.
You know, where do I feel limited in my thinking? And if I can move through that, then I have freedom, right? And then I find Uranus on the other side of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like maybe a new language for you to be talking about it in terms of planets, but it's a nice thing to have a different way of interacting with your experience, and that's really a great offering that Lisa brings to the table. You also have a summer special on the table.
I do, yes, I do, because everything has been so heavy. I am starting. So 7 years ago, I think is when I started my official journey of getting my yoga certification and my astrology certification. And now I'm at the 7 years testing where I feel like it's time to grow. It's time to do something else. So I'm going for a new astrology certification, but it has been such a heavy time and I am excited about that. I wanted to extend a discount for astrology readings for students, especially here at the studio, and 2 of the other studios that I teach at. You know, it is my gift to you. I think we all need that little Jupiter, you know, extension of support.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a great way to connect with Lisa and to get some personal answers for yourself, some insights and some support, and that's available to all of our memberships. So if you practice here, you're a yes.
Yes, you are.
Reach out.
And we can meet in person right here at the studio.
Yeah, love it. Okay, girl, I'm buckled up. I'm ready to go, and I'm glad I'm riding with you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Like,
you.
share, comment, do it all so that we can keep bringing you great things.
Yes.
And namaste.
Namaste.